Today I'm taking a look at 4 different games and doing little mini reviews on them. Hey, it's Jared from Specifically Solo. These won't be full in-depth reviews with gameplay overviews or anything like that, just my quick thoughts on 4 different games, all of which you can play solo. And those 4 games are Valley Glassworks, Expeditions, Daybreak, and Harvest. All of these are fairly recent games that have come out in the past year or two, although they're not the newest of the new, but they're games that I have played recently for the first time, and I enjoy all 4 of these for different reasons, so I wanted to go ahead and share my thoughts with you. So let's go ahead and jump in with the first one, Valley Glassworks. So this is Valley Glassworks. This is designed by a design team that I'm really enjoying what they've been doing recently. That's Adam Hill, Ben Pinchback, and Matt Riddle, and this art is done by Andrew Bosley. And in Valley Glassworks, what you are doing is collecting these glass pieces from a river and placing them onto your personal board. And how you arrange them is going to score you points at the end of the game for how you have them in different rows and columns. Some pieces of glass are very, very common, so you might want to put those near the end of your row if you can to try and score more points. Some are more rare, so you might put those earlier on because you know you may not be getting as many of that piece of glass throughout the course of the game. The artwork is really fantastic. The components are really well done too. And all you're doing on your turn is placing a piece of glass into the river and then taking whatever is on that particular tile and adding it to your player board. So while it is very simple, it is still really thinky. There's a lot of decisions that you have to make in terms of what pieces of glass do I have currently, what shapes are matching up, what colors of glass do I maybe need to try and score the most points. Very easy game, but again, really a one that you have a couple of decisions that you're making throughout the course of the gameplay. Another thing that's really cool is when you take the pieces off of a certain part of the river, that piece of the river slides all the way down back to the end, and then you'll put more pieces on there, obviously, but it gives you that effect of the water flowing or the river flowing throughout the course of the game. You can also go to the lake at certain points during the game, and that's where you can select 4 pieces from the lake, but you have to put them into your satchel, and you're not able to put them onto your player board right away. Now, the solo for this game is really well done for a game of this size. There are on the backs of the player boards different solo opponents. So you can play with up to 4 players. So there's 4 different solo opponents that you can play against in Valley Glassworks, and they all work a little bit differently. There's one that's very, very simple, all the way up to a pretty complex one that would be hard to beat. So for that reason, I wanted to talk about it because I feel like sometimes games like this don't have very robust solo modes, but this one really does. All 4 of those opponents work a little bit differently. They do different things. They're all unique in the way that they decide to play the game. So I've really been enjoying this one. It has a lot of replayability as well because of those different solo opponents. And every game is different. It's a very quick game as well to get to the table, to set up. The game maybe will take you 20 to 30 minutes. So it's one that you can play a couple of times in a row and one that I've really been enjoying. So Valley Glassworks, that's the first one on this list. I figured we'd just go up in size as we go through the video, so we'll go with the next biggest box, which is Harvest. This one is designed by Trey Chambers. This is published by Keymaster Games. They also make Parks. In fact, they just announced they're coming out with a 2nd edition of Parks here. But in this game, in Harvest, this is kind of a re-implementation of an older game that they have reworked, updated a little bit, and also made look really, really pretty. So this is a worker placement game. You're also drafting a little bit, and there's some variable player powers. So each round you're going to place your 3 workers out, which are 3 little wheelbarrows on the board, and you're trying to obviously harvest crops to score points. So you'll have these little polyomino pieces that are crops that you're trying to gather and put into your personal area, and then a couple of times throughout the game you will harvest and you will get money and points for that harvest. So you really are trying to plan when is the best time to harvest in this game, when's going to be the time when you can get the most points possible. And also, with only 3 actions that you can do every round because of the 3 workers, there's always like 6 spots that you want to go to, but you can only go to 3. So you really have to think, how can I maximize and be as efficient as possible in this particular round to get done what I need to get done. I really enjoyed this one. It's very simple. All of the worker placement spots are interesting and do different things. Like I said, they're all good. You want to go to a bunch of them every round, but the fact that you only have those 3 workers makes it really tough. Now, the solo mode for this one, his name is Gary, and he's a cow, and he's very easy to operate. You're just going to flip a tile over, and that's going to tell you where Gary is going to place one of his wheelbarrows or one of his workers. When you play by yourself, you're kind of simulating a 3-person game almost, because Gary will have 6 workers that he will place out. So when you place one, then when it's Gary's turn, he will place 2, and you'll just go back and forth in that manner. Now, Gary always inevitably goes to the spots where you want to go to. So while he is a simple solo opponent, he does a good job of blocking those very valuable spaces. And it's really annoying sometimes when you think, there's no way he's going to go there. And then he just, the tile you flip over is that particular space that you were going to go to the very next turn. Also, this game has kind of a wake-up phase. If you've played Viticulture, you're probably familiar with this, where you will pick a number, and that's the order in which you will go in that round. So sometimes you might go first, or sometimes Gary might go first, depending on if you have a high or a low number. And there's obviously a lot of strategy in that as well, determining on what you're going to pick, because all of those wake up tiles give you bonuses. But obviously, if you go earlier in the round, your bonus is less than if you were to wait and go later in the round. You would get a better bonus on that tile. Also, the variable player powers, they are pretty slight, but there are different characters that you can play as in the game that all give you the ability to do something just a little bit different when you're playing. Nothing super duper complex, but adds some nice variety to the game. And then in this game, like a lot of other solo games, there is a whole book of challenges. I think if I remember correctly, there's 18 different challenges that you can do in Harvest. So there's a ton of replayability here in terms of the fact that you're able to come back to the game over and over again and set it up differently, or maybe it tells you to play with a different character, or maybe it adds a unique rule and says, hey, you can't do this particular game. Whatever the case may be, those solo challenges are really fun and do increase in difficulty as well. So this is a really solid solo game. I've played this solo and multiplayer. I like it both ways, but I think it works great solo. I don't think you lose any of the experience when you play solo versus the multiplayer game. Production is really well done. I really enjoy the fact that, again, it's worker placement, but you don't have very many workers, so you really have to think about what you want to do. And then when you are able to harvest, that only happens a couple of times during the game, but it feels awesome when you do it, because you're normally getting a lot of coins or a lot of points when you harvest. In fact, I had a turn in this where I got like 25 points on one harvest, just because I had planned for that for a couple of rounds and then finally had the chance for it to pay off in a later round. And you only play 4 rounds, so it's a very quick game as well, but one that I've really been enjoying a lot. That is Harvest from Keymaster Games and designed by Trey Chambers. Okay, next is a game from a guy that you've probably heard of before. That's Matt Leacock, and this is Daybreak. This is his new game. It won the Kennerspiel, and so that was one of the reasons that I wanted to check it out. And so in Daybreak, you are trying to control the climate crisis. You're trying to lower the global temperature and reduce your emissions throughout the course of the game. If you have a lot of emissions, that's going to raise the temperature up, and if it gets to a certain point, you will lose the game. This is also a cooperative game, so if you were to play it multiplayer, you would be, working with other people that you're playing with. But there's a few things that I really enjoy about this particular game. This one is all about the cards and all about the hand management. All of the cards do different things, and they have these different symbols or tags on them that can really get powerful when you decide to build them up. So you'll have 4 cards in front of you, in front of your player board, and you'll play as a certain country or continent that you play as in this game. And so when you play a card, you can decide if you're going to tuck it behind one of your cards or put it in front one of those 4 cards that you have out in front of you. If you tuck it behind, it will make whatever the front card is usually more powerful if you're able to match the icons up. If you tuck it in front, or if you put it in front, then that's a new action that you are able to take. And there's so many cards in this game, you will not see all of them throughout the course of one game. The solo mode is very easy to run and very easy easy to operate. Since it's a cooperative game, it's basically just like you're trying to tackle this whole situation by yourself. So you just start with, less things that you basically have to accomplish than if you were playing like a 3 or 4 player game. But other than that, it doesn't really change that much. There's a few cards that you can't use in the solo game, but it's not that many. Also, all the cards have QR codes on them, so you can scan them. If you have any questions about a particular card, just scan them with your phone. It brings up the directions for that particular card, and also lets you learn a little bit about the various cards as well. I think this is such a unique theme for a game, which is one reason that it really intrigued me. Of course, Matt Leacock designing it, that really made me interested as well, because he's done some other fantastic games, most notably Pandemic being his biggest game that he's designed. This one, though, is a little swingy, kind of like just in Pandemic, where sometimes things are going really well and other times you feel like you have no chance. That's kind of the same case here in Daybreak. Just because there are so many cards in the deck, you never know what you're going to get. So some games you might get really great combos that you're able to work with and make things happen and reduce your emissions to win the game. Other games, those card connections just aren't matching up for whatever reason, and so it seems like defeat is inevitable once you get about, a couple rounds into the game, when you feel like, oh, there's no way that I'm going to be able to overcome this. But it's one that I like to keep coming back to, because it gives you that sense of, oh, I got close, or I got further than I did last time. Let's see if I can do better this particular time. You can also play this one on BGA if you want to as well, Board Game Arena. The online implementation works well, less shuffling that way. This does take up a decent amount of table space, and all the cards, like I said, are really unique and really cool to look at, but you're always trying to think about how you can combo those cards the best off of each other. So if you're somebody that likes to create those combos, create those chains, make the actions more powerful as the game goes on, really kind of divert depending on what you need to do in that particular round. Maybe you need to get your emissions down, or maybe you need to create more power for your, civilization, if you will, that you're representing in the game, your country that you're representing in the game. You might want to try to get more forests or oceans out on the board, so that'll help you reduce your emissions. So lots of different things that you can do throughout the course of the game. An easy game to understand, one that looks kind of daunting when you first set it up. You're like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so complicated. It's really not. It's really pretty easy to figure out what's going on. And once you play a game or two, you have a nice handle on it. And again, like I said, the fact that you get really close sometimes makes you want to come back and try again and see if you can kind of beat the puzzle of Daybreak. So another really solid one that I've had a lot of fun with, that's Daybreak, designed by Matt Leacock. Okay, and finally, the one that comes in the biggest box. I don't know if we're even going to be able to get it all on the screen, but that is Expeditions from Stonemaier Games. This is designed by Jamie Stegmaier. This is a spiritual successor to Scythe. That's set in the same world, the same universe, although the gameplay is very different from Scythe, and that's one reason why I really enjoy it. So I kind of bounced off Scythe for whatever reason. You'll notice it wasn't in my top 50 solo games of all time, and I don't really know why that is. I just found it a little complex. I didn't really find the solo game that enjoyable for me personally, but that is not the case with Expeditions. So in Expeditions, the main thing that's going on here is these multi-use cards, which you're going to be able to use in a couple of different ways depending on how you strategize throughout the course of the game. Also, there's workers that you are collecting as well, and those workers will be placed on those cards to take specific actions also. So the cards are really well done in this game, and it's also a modular board as well. You have these tiles that you will set up, and they'll be arranged differently every time that you play. So while the locations are the same, they will kind of change throughout the course of the game. And just like inside, you're trying to get stars for scoring, and whoever gets 4 stars first, either you or the solo mode, wins the game. And there's different things that you can do. You might decide to upgrade particular cards. You might decide to try and get corruption markers and score a star that way. You might try to discover a lot of locations and get map tokens and get a star that way. So there's lots of different ways to strategize in this game, and lots of different paths you can take throughout the course of the game. Some of the things that are happening in this game, you're also using hand management as well, because you can only keep a certain number of cards in your hand at a particular time. And this is a little bit of engine building happening in this game too. So you're playing those cards, you're building your engine, you're moving your mech, you have a mech out on the board that you're going to move to different locations, and then flip that over and see what that particular location might give you. It's really fun. It also follows that mechanism of Scythe, where you can basically gather, play, move, choose 2 on your turn. So you have a little cube, just like in Scythe, that you move between those slots until you take a refresh action. Then you're able to do all 3. So that creates an interesting decision, because you're like, I don't want to move and then play a card this turn, or would I just like to stay here and gather what's at this spot and play a card, or, oh, that space over there looks really good, maybe I'll go over there and try to gather stuff. So lots of different decisions that you're making during the course of the game. I love the solo mode for this game. The solo mode for this game is fantastic. So there's 2 mechs that are the solo mode. One moves this way and the other moves this way throughout the course of the game on the top 2 rows of locations that you set out on the table. And that's really all they do. They're just kind of moving. They'll occasionally collect some things, but most of the time they're just getting in the way of you, because you can't be on the same spot as them. But also, when they collect things, it's very easy to do their scoring. You're not having to try and figure out exactly where they need to move to or how many spaces they need to move. It's just look at the card. Does it want a corruption token? Does it want a map token? Does it want to go somewhere else? If that's less than 3 spaces away, it moves to that particular spot, and that's all you do for the solo mode. There are different difficulty levels of the solo mode as well. I believe there's 5 different difficulty levels in the game, and so that's one thing that has really attracted me to this and has got me playing this a lot recently. It's just due to the simplicity of that solo mode. Again, I felt like the solo mode inside was a little difficult to understand, a little complicated to understand the movement and where exactly you were supposed to go. Not the case in Expeditions. Again, it's just, go down those spots, and then when it gets to the end, it goes back this way and then goes down those spots again. And that's all it's doing throughout the course of the game, while it is collecting a lot of stuff, and while it is being very competitive with you in terms of its scoring and getting its stars, because again, whoever gets those 4 stars first wins the game. So the different levels of the solo mode, if you play on very easy, it will take it longer to get those stars, whereas if you play on the hardest one, it will get those stars very quickly. So that's Expeditions by Stonemaier Games and designed by Jamie Stegmaier. So there you go. 4 games that I've really been enjoying recently that are all fairly recent that have come out, and all a little bit different as well. We had the abstract game in Valley Glassworks. We had some worker placement in Harvest. We had a card play, hand management game in Daybreak, and then a lot of different stuff going on in Expeditions. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to like and subscribe. That really helps out the channel. Until next time, I'm Jared. You've been checking out Specifically Solo.